Hello, I'm Julie.
And my name is Adeline.
And today we're going to be talking about viruses and bacteria. And specifically, we're going to go over the differences and similarities between them.
Yeah. So, to do that, we're actually going to fill out this Venn diagram. You can see that? Okay, so here are viruses and bacteria, and like when blue and purple, when blue and red combine, it makes purple, so that's both. Okay? Cool.
And then the only other thing is feel free to look at this diagram. We might direct you towards it a couple times depending on the questions. Some of them are a little difficult, so it'll help you. So for our first question, we're going to compare viruses and bacteria's sizes. So based on the diagram back here, and considering that the bacterium actually would probably extend past the end of the whiteboard and actually be probably about the size of a small factory or a one-story house, which one would be bigger?
Bacteria.
Bacteria.
So the bacteria are larger, and the viruses are smaller. Okay, so our next question is, which of these has a plasma membrane or cell wall, and which of them has a protein coat? So I'm not really sure if you might know, but if you don't really know the answer, you can guess.
This is kind of a hard question.
Virus protein coat.
Yeah, very good.
Good answer.
Now, did you know that already, or did you guess? Yeah. So, and then our third question has to do with ribosomes.
So, if you look on the board, you might be able to find a really big hit for this question, so look hard. So, which of them has ribosomes? Can you tell me?
Bacteria.
Bacteria do.
Now, ribosomes are really important to the bacterium, and basically you can think of them as the assembly line in, say, a small factory. And specifically, do you want to explain?
So, if like we were talking about earlier, if the bacterium is a factory, then the ribosomes would probably be like the workers in the factory. So they'd be the ones like making whatever needs to be made. Like let's say the cell needs like certain parts, like membranes or proteins or things like that. Then the ribosomes would be what makes that. Okay. So our next question is actually a bit about ribosomes. So one of these can reproduce on their own, and the other one cannot, and requires a host. So what do you think? Which of these requires a host to reproduce? So that means they can't make babies on their own.
And they need ribosomes from somewhere else. They don't have them.
Viruses.
That's correct. Okay.
And then our next question actually has to do with what they look like, what viruses and bacteria look like. And you might be able, again, if you look at the picture, you can figure out which one's which, probably, but which one do you think is a virus?
The one on the left.
You want to point to it?
Is
Okay,
a
go.
virus.
Yep. Very nice.
How did you know?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when you look at this bacteria one, it looks kind of different than this one, right?
Yeah.
So this one, I mean, you can see that there's long things called flagella here, but then you see these little small ones too. Do you see that?
Yeah.
So those ones, they're like little hairs, like really tiny ones, so they go like this.
Yeah.
And then we have the long ones, the flagellum. They kind of like are big arms that go like this. So what do you think those little hairs, the cilia and the flagella, what could they be for? You don't know? You're like, think about maybe like the tail on a fish, you know? It goes like back and forth, moves the water. Yeah, exactly. It's for moving. Okay. Good job.
And then based on that, the next two cards are actual pictures of viruses and bacteria. So, which one do you think would be a virus again? Do you have any idea?
This one.
This one. Very nice. Now, these are actual pictures that are from our lab. And this one has a cyanophage and this one has cyanobacteria, which we'll talk about later.
So now let's look at different examples of viruses and bacteria. Okay, so the first one includes the flu, the common cold, chickenpox, and cyanophages. Okay, now hold that in your thought. Okay, now let's look at the next one. So it includes strep, lactobacillus, which is probably in your yogurt, and salmonella, E. coli, and cyanobacteria. So which one do you think, point to the one you think is a bacteria? Top or bottom?
Top one.
Okay, cool. Cyanobacteria kind of gave it away, huh? Okay.
And then we have one more question for you. And maybe this one might be the hardest. I'm not sure. We'll see. So, which one, viruses, bacteria, or both, do you think are not all bad for humans?
Bacteria.
Bacteria, well, you're half right. That's 50%. But viruses are also not all bad for humans. So this one actually goes into both categories.
But yeah, a lot of people tell me, like, they're like, what kind of good viruses are out there? But like, the ones that we study in our lab are actually, yeah, they're the good kind of viruses. So let me tell you a big story first. So we have some bacteria that are in the ocean. These bacteria are special bacteria. They're photosynthetic, which means that they can take energy from the sun, so they don't have to eat anything. They just sit in the sun, and they make their own, like, food, sugars and stuff. So these bacteria are called cyanobacteria. So cyanobacteria like this, okay? And then these bacteria, since they're in the water all day, they're in the water all day and it's really sunny, they can just like sit there and they'll have as many babies as they want, right? But that's not really good, right? Or else they'll have an ocean full of bacteria, right? That might be a little scary. But these bacteria are actually really good for us because they produce 50% of the oxygen that we breathe every day. Can you believe that?
Lot.
So you're just breathing in what bacteria helped make. So these are not normal bacteria, these are the cyanobacteria. So just remember that. Okay. So to control these cyanobacteria populations, we have something called cyanophages right here. So these are special type of viruses that infect the photosynthetic bacteria. So let's pretend this table is a bacteria, and then let's get a big virus. Okay, I'll choose this one. So this virus, or cyanophage, will come down, bam, onto the bacteria. Okay, so then usually it'll find like a certain spot to touch with its tails, and it'll land and say, okay, this is something I want to land on. So it's kind of like a spaceship, or like an alien, you know? So then it'll come down, and then it'll actually move down and like go here until its sheath, or like it'll inject its DNA. So this DNA or RNA, like the nucleic acids that we talked about, they're the bosses of the factory. So they'll actually go down and actually enter into the bacteria. So it's like invading, like literally. Yeah. So when the virus does that, then these new factory bosses, the nucleic acids, will take over the factories, which are the factory workers, which are, do you remember? The ribosomes. So these are the factory workers, so they're kind of like working on a line, assembly line. So they're making stuff, and then all of a sudden they get a new recipe that comes along. So this is it's not to make bacteria parts, but instead to make virus parts. So then instead of making bacteria, we'll be like, oh, okay, we have a new recipe, but we'll keep on making it. So then they'll make tons and tons of viruses. So then the viruses will fill up the bacteria. So this is a little bacterium, and then the viruses will go like this and fill it up until it actually pops open. So when it pops open, then all these viruses will come out, right? All the baby viruses. But then, do you remember what else will come out? Okay, so let's talk about photosynthesis, remember? So these bacterium, by themselves, swimming in the ocean, they can actually make energy from the sun in the form of sugars. So then when the bacterium opens up, what else comes out besides baby viruses?
The sugar?
Like the sugar and other nutrients that the bacterium makes. So then all the sugar is released into the ocean. And it's practically like a piñata. You know, like a piñata? So what the virus does is it practically just breaks it open. So the piñata is like the bacterium, it'll just break it open, and then all these goodies like candy, sugar, and yummy stuff that other organisms need, it'll just come out into the ocean. So like smaller things like maybe plankton or even microorganisms, they'll be able to eat those, and it's just like a party for everyone. So it's actually really nice. So this entire cycle is called nutrient cycling.
So now that Addie's explained basically what we do in our lab, or some of the things we study, now we have the creative part. So you guys, everyone gets to create their own virus to take home. So basically, we're going to make them out of Wiki sticks, which you can find at pretty much any craft store. So now that Addie has finished explaining basically what we do in our lab, or rather what we study in our lab, we're going to go ahead and move on to the creative part of our lesson, and we can make these viruses kind of like the examples that are in front of us, and so that you can take one home. So first thing to ask is, would you rather make, there's a mini version, a middle-sized version, a really tall one?
The mini version? Okay, cool.
Addie's better at doing that.
So if you want to make the mini version, you can choose 3 wax sticks to form like the capsid. So okay, let's look at the diagram. So the capsid is like almost like the head part and the tails. So you can either make it all the same color, or you can do 3 different colors, so then it'll like be more colorful, but you can just choose 3 wax sticks. So choose your colors. And the pink one?
Yeah.
Okay, here you go. Nice choice. Okay, so what you want to do now is line them up so that they're like all together at the end. Okay, and then you fold them in half. Awesome. Okay, so now you need to have, like, you're kind of going to give the virus a little belt, but this belt, we call it a sheath. So this whole thing is the sheath, okay? So choose the color you want for your sheath. You need a red one?
Yeah.
Okay. Make sure it's a longer one. Maybe we'll do this one. It's a little bit longer. Okay, so you just wrap it around the middle, kind of like a belt, yeah? Make sure you wrap it really tight so it doesn't get loose. Awesome. Okay, so now we can't forget to have the bosses, remember?
Yeah.
The bosses, you remember what the bosses were? You can look at the diagram if you're confused.
Tails?
Or do you remember what, okay, so remember the boss that was inside the virus and that was injected into the bacterium? Do you remember what that was? It's probably in like the head.
Maybe this is a little easier.
Oh, yeah.
If you look at this, and let's make it more like a person, sort of. Think of it, it's called an analogy, right? So the capsid, which is this green part, is kind of like your head or your skull, and then inside you have what's usually inside skull or your head.
Your blood, your nerves.
Okay, your nerves, which combine to make, it's a really generic name for it. Your brain, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the brain would be composed of the nucleic acids. That's that stringy stuff on the inside. And then you'd have something like a neck or a body, which is the collar and the sheath, and then the tails, which look like legs, right?
Yeah.
So, Addie, do you want to explain that now?
Oh. So then, remember, like we were talking about, so the brain, so what would be the brain in this diagram for the virus?
And then, can you read what this says?
Nucleic acids.
Nucleic acids. That's correct. So you need you to choose like a smaller piece for the nucleic acids that you want to put inside. Green. Cool. Nice. Okay, so you can just scrunch it up into a little piece so they can fit inside the little virus capsid or its head. It's cute. Okay, so you can make a little cage so that it can go fit in there properly and it doesn't fall out. Awesome.
Good.
Cool. So, but you're not done yet until you can have your virus stand on its tails. Okay, so you're going to try to see if you can move the tails around to see how your,
Yeah. Kind of like if you know what a teepee looks like, right? You can kind of make them go out. Yeah, go out.
You got that? Do you need a little hand? Yeah. So what I usually like to do is I try to spread them out in like different directions like this. You need to help me with the other two? Or other three? Okay, so now let's see if it can stand. You can also help squish them or spread them around. Hey, it looks good. Cool. Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming.